Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for December 21, 2021, the Flash Cash Edition. And we begin with that story from Insider, that Trump's International Hotel in D.C. was the epicenter of corruption, where anyone looking to curry favor with the Trump administration would just walk in and flash cash. This was in a report published by Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics. The assessment follows a damning House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure report released last week. It found that the agency overseeing the Trump organization's lease washed its hands of any responsibility in investigating ethical concerns and if the emolument clauses of the Constitution was being followed. The report found that the General Services Administration failed to track payments from foreign governments to the hotel. Next up, more bad news for the Serious Fraud Office as Paul Bond, a sales executive convicted of involvement in the bribery scheme involving Unaoil, has appealed his conviction, utilizing the overturning of Zayed Akel's guilty verdict as well as the basis. Bond was a co-defendant with Mr. Akel and claims that the appeal, or rather the overturning of Akel's conviction, applies equally to Mr. Bond's case. It, of course, involves the actions by Serious Fraud Office head Lisa Osofsky in allowing a private investigator, David Tinsley, to communicate with Bond and Akel and try to convince them to plead guilty. It's not clear on whose behest, but possibly the Ashantis. So probably this will be overturned and the Serious Fraud Office will look bad again. An interesting article in Reuters about hacking. And the interesting thing about it is that Russians are using hacking of corporate businesses to garner information around insider trading. 5 Russians now in U.S. custody carried out a vast $82 million insider trading scheme that allowed them to profit from corporate information stole through hacking. So once again, hacking rears its ugly head, and this time in the form of insider trading. And the final article comes to us from the Washington Post. It's ongoing about its report from the Pandora Papers on tax havens, and apparently the state of the state of Wyoming is now the leading tax haven for U.S. and it's called the Cowboy Cocktail, and it's a coveted financial arrangement that allows the wealthy to hide money. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.